my gems. I am Janita Pascal, your inspirational mindset shifter, and the founder and managing director of G.P.A Inc., where we inspire intellectual innovation. Today, I am happy that you can join us here as my guest, I should say Mr. Adventure, but his name is Jordan Arthur Florenville. He's a dedicated personal trainer and an outdoor enthusiast. He takes you behind the wind where we go behind his cover story. Behind the wind are experiences and or challenges that we all encounter. Those dreams and visions that we set out to achieve can pose many stumbling blocks which often leave us questioning why, and they often send us back to the drawing board to determine where should we turn next and how should we take those next steps. But nobody knows, as all they ever get to see is that cover story. That cover story that leaves others questioning, why can't I get there too? Here, we speak to doctors, authors, lawyers, professional coaches, entrepreneurs, your everyday people, and many more, as they inspire you by sharing their stories and experiences that they encountered before basking in their winning season. Again, I want to thank you for joining us here as my guest joins us to share his roadmap to Mount Everest post Kilimanjaro. Hi, Jordan. Welcome to this platform as you share and inspire our audience.
Hello. The pleasure is mine, and I very much appreciated all of the different professionals that the podcast or the show has on, and it's an honor to be able to be a contributor, contributing to a platform like this where people can participate, whether it be by listening or taking notes or just kind of listening to my story.
Right.
It's always something I pride myself on doing and doing it well and being able to give them something that they can draw from and reference on. So thank you for having me. Thank you for making the time. And I'm happy the schedules can align.
Right. I'm so happy that you took the time out. We received so many different applications from different men, but you were the first man to make it on here. So I just want to say,
Really?
Yes, we appreciate your time that you're taking out to be here with us today.
Thank you very much. It's an honor, honestly, what you're doing, what people are now deciding to do, to use platforms like these to reach people.
Right.
It's a wonderful opportunity, and it should not be taken for granted. The body of work you put into this to set this up and make it a reality, hats off to you. And let's just hope this entire dialogue can be productive and people can learn.
Great. So talking about this entire dialogue, if I was stuck in an elevator with you and we're meeting each other for the first time, who would you say Jordan is?
That's interesting, Well, that's when you mentioned that being stuck in an elevator with me, it would be depending on the size of the elevator. I'm 6'4" and a tall presence. So depending on the type of elevator you would be in, it either might be a bit of a initial intimidation, but if it's a wide elevator, you'd be good. But rest assured, if you were stuck in the elevator, you would not feel scared beyond a physical appearance. You would feel comfortable, you would feel taken care of. I think I pride myself. I love human beings. I love protecting. I like preserving. I like going beyond the call to make sure the people who are sometimes quite literally below me in terms of height and people who need me feel that they're in good hands and they're safe. So yeah, if you were in an elevator, you get to introduce myself. I try to de-escalate the situation. I try to give you a peace of mind. I'd be like, let me know anything you need to know that I can help us get through the process and ultimately make it out in one piece. That's for sure.
Okay, great. You spoke about protecting, finding your peace. You would be the individual's peace in that elevator. And you also indicated in your biography that you're a son of Babuno. And
Indeed.
for those made in Babuno, yes. And for those of us who may not know in the wider world, Babonneau is known to have its own breathtaking sights. Often we hear about Soufrière and the Pitors, but we have the famous sky rides in Babonneau, and that is something I want to experience this year. I have not
Not
been,
yet. Okay.
and many tourists and locals alike venture out to experience, the adventure for the day. Talking about
Mhm.
adventure, where did your love for adventure stem from?
So the adventures began honestly as early as I know myself. You know, I would sound like the more senior people, but a lot has changed since I was young. I grew up on a road called Tishime, and
Okay.
at that time it was not as well paved. And Tishime is literally on a hill. The hill takes you to Babonneau Central, and if you go the opposite way, it takes you to Foresor Chasse, and ultimately where you describe, which is the Sky Rides, which is
Right.
also conveniently located to La Sorcière. So all of my mini adventures started off with actually my dad and a church organization called Pathfinders and Adventurers. So you would do things they called honors. The equivalent would be Boy or Girl Scouts, where you get patches.
Right.
And so we would do honors where you would do hiking, you would do fire starting or lashing, knot tying, and so on and so forth. And there was always a practical element of it. Some of these practical elements required you to actually do a hike and use the lashing and knot tying in these actual circumstances. And sometimes it was just a situation where we were doing an outdoor activity for the youth. So I can remember by the time I was 8, I had already climbed not Mount, sorry, Go Piton. I had done Piton Floor. I think later on we did La Sorcière. Both of these mountains are in Babonneau. Peter Floor being in Forestier, and behind Peter Floor being Denry, and La Sorcière being quite close to Granans, but also you can get it from Chassia as well. So I think just having these early on experiences, living in a community that's quite different from a lot of the other communities that you can find to be coastline, like the ancillaries and canneries of the world. It
Yeah.
it put me in a situation where the outdoors always surrounded me, and I was always curious to know what was there. I was lucky Babonneau is a strong farming community, so in my mind, the forest would always have fruits or waterfall or animals, and being as curious as I was like, okay, I need to find myself there. I need to be brave, being afraid of the dark, being afraid of what might potentially be there. So
Yeah.
all of these kind of little introductions kind of opened the door and made me kind of not forced, but put me in a position to really explore the outdoors. And I enjoyed it. I really felt like the sweat, the push. My siblings and my cousins, you're older than me from about 3 to 7 years and up. And trying to keep up with the front of the pack, not wanting to just be with your friends and having to hold their hand and wanting to
Yeah.
be ahead, being a little competitive. These things really made me enjoy. And I'm a big eater. So, when you get there, there's some fruits in a tree, there's some guavas, you come home, your clothes, it's a bit stained with, mango juice or guava seeds or something of that sort. I always found the outdoors, it would give me that sense of detachment from the hustle and bustle of life. And
Right.
it broke it down to the simple. Moving, maybe a potential good fruit being there, and always great views and a sense of
Right.
accomplishment when you get to the top.
Okay. That must have been some amazing experiences.
Oh yes, definitely. I can say my childhood, we like every other person, you have hiccups, you have things you wish did not happen. But in terms of the outdoors, I'm very blessed. I'll give you a quick one. We had a tree. Can't remember what type of mango because St. Lucia has so many different mangoes. But we would call a tree the "We Will Rock You" tree. And what you would do, the tree had basically a fork, pretty much in terms of the branches, and we would sit on the bottom end. Somebody would jump onto the top, and then they would rock the tree up and down and sing the song "We Will Rock You" until someone fell off. And we did that for years upon years until one day the tree was cut down. But that for me is a core memory because you had to go into the bush, go there with my cousins and play around. Some people fell off. It was not ideal, obviously not super safe. But that's the innocence of childhood. And
Right.
I enjoyed that thoroughly. The tree had mangoes. Sometimes we would pick the mangoes and have them. So just those little things really stayed with me. And I always enjoyed it, always.
Okay, that's really lovely. I just wanted to know along your journey, as you took those power walks, climbed some of the world's tallest peaks, and claimed victory. We have to put that in there. You claimed victory. How did you prepare? And were there any fears you encountered? Where did those fears stem from? And how were you able to overcome those fears?
So, in terms of fears, not really per se. I would say it was more so cautionary, cautionary doubt. Let's call it that. Kilimanjaro, the only thing I really considered was the altitude because we don't have mountains here with a high enough altitude to actually affect you on the hike.
Right.
The steepness will, but that is not related to the altitude. Um, let's go in chronological order. When I did Gopi tour, I knew I was with the church family. No fear. The only fear was me not coming first or me being at the back of the group. Um, PTP tour, I think there was fear because of how most St. Lucians described it. It was always
Okay.
described as a mountain that was treacherous and dangerous. Only the cadets could do it, and someone had died there, or was it a plane that crashed? I remember there being a lot of like a sphere, a shadow over it that would put people off.
Right.
And one of my friends did it on his birthday, and when he told me, he was like, "Jordan, we could definitely do this." I did this mountain once, and by the second time I had done it, we did a free pick challenge on it, and again, no fear. The only fear that was there was of what people said, but when I actually find myself on these mountains, nothing. We went to Dominica. We had no guide. Um, that was a crazy one. We got there, and I insisted that instead of doing waterfalls, I wanted to climb one mountain. We were on the maybe day before the last, and I was playing basketball in Dominica. I met a guy, and he told me he could take me. Long story short, after I was complaining to him, I was like, "It's 1 p.m. right now." So I called my friend Jolwy. People know him as Father Nature, and I told him, "Listen, it's either you coming with me on to climb this mountain, or I'm going solo. But I am climbing a mountain before I leave this country." So we went to Diablo Terre. Diablo Terre is one of the, if not the tallest mountain in the Lesser Antilles. And the mountain is supposed to take 8 hours round trip. It's 1 o'clock, bear in mind. And Dominica has about what they call 12 to 14 segments, and that's sections of their rainforest. It's much larger than ours. And if you get lost there, you could be lost potentially for days. And we had to call on our free pick challenge and our Mount Jimmy navigation skills. And believe it or not, we did this mountain round trip in about 3 hours and 40 minutes, which was supposed to be an 8-hour climb. So I think these build-ups really give me confidence. So by the time I got to Kilimanjaro, because I had known previous people who had done it, and I had trained with them, and they told me, "There's definitely you can do that, Jordan." I have not had a mountain yet where I've been actually afraid to climb. And I
Climb.
think what's done that for me is because I found fitness and exercise relatively early on, and a lot of the people who mentor me without knowing they mentor me, they come from a place where it's everyday preparation. So I train every day. I run loads of miles within the year. I make it my duty to try to put myself in some form of relatively rigorous exercise daily. So I know at least my bases are covered in terms of nutrition, fitness, and mentality. So when the opportunity then comes, I'm ready. I always tell people that's the difference. When I meet people on these mountains, when I take people there,
Mhm.
when preparation meets opportunity, fear is very low, but confidence is very high. And obviously, too much confidence can lead to arrogance. But
Right.
if you can mitigate that, if you can respect the mountain, respect the situation, but at the same time understand the body of work I've put in relation to what I'm about to take on, there's some kind of synergy between it,
Right.
you'll be good to go. You'll be good to go most of the time, I would say. Like they say in economics, ceteris paribus, all else equals, you'll be able to navigate your terrain. But yeah, no major fears. It's just when people ask me how am I able to do it, I'm like, it's an everyday thing. Every day I wake up, I think of how can I prepare the mind, how can I prepare the body. If a situation comes up impromptu and there's not much preparation time, am I as a person ready? There's
Right.
other things to consider when you do very big climbs above 3,000 meters in terms of gear, in terms of um, environment, in terms of who's taking you, in terms of that country and what might be there. But that you can handle step by step. In terms of your person, that for me has always been a day-to-day thing. And the last thing I would say is what's happened over time is I think I've embraced the trust I feel from people. After
Okay.
completing a Kilimanjaro climb, my mother really pushed me to make it something public, and I just did it because I'm just into mountains. But
Right.
now, because I understand how much people see me and they've invested confidence in me and they expect me to deliver, and it's not that I do it for them, but I respect that they've invested that amount of trust in
Right.
me, and I'd like to prove them right.
Right.
So I think it's these two things that kind of push me forward every time and keep my ambition.
Okay. You spoke about ambition, and you also spoke about Dominica, and you're climbing Dominica. I am Dominican,
Represent.
and you will not find me going to any of those places that you mentioned. There are many individuals like myself who, well, I love nature, but in terms of stepping out on this adventure, you might not find me stepping out on a limb because sometimes I don't know if it's fair, but there's something keeping us back. What would you say to someone who may have this very dream of pursuing the climb or would like to experience any other aspect of adventure, but is afraid of taking that step due to fear of failure?
And I'll throw the question back at you. So you were afraid to fail, and so you either procrastinate or you delay. What's the next best alternative?
I wouldn't say that I am afraid to fail because I have this upcoming trip and skydiving is on the cards. It's not that I am afraid to fail at skydiving. I believe that, especially in the Caribbean context, I spoke to my coworkers. I say, hey, I'm going over to this country and I am going to pursue skydiving. And everybody's like, what if the chain would burst? What if something crucial would happen? So that is what is in the back of my head, not necessarily failing. But for
Mm,
me, there's just so much to see. There's just so much to experience in the world. But just that little hint of what if something goes wrong, I'm already like, okay, perhaps I should not pursue this because they might be right. So this is what is maybe holding me back from pursuing the skydiving and perhaps also the climb. I know as a child, going to the beach, my mother would always say, don't go close to the water, try to stay as much on the sand. So maybe something in childhood or how we were raised,
mm.
there's just extra type of caution that I'm always like, okay, take a step back. Perhaps you should not pursue this. What if something goes wrong? So I'm operating out of that space and not necessarily the fear of failure.
And so the people who have told you these things, what are they doing? That's always what I tell people. The people who are the ones deterring you, whether it be in good faith or not. What are they doing to now put you in a position to succeed either elsewhere or in that same position? They've not given you solutions, they've given you hurdles. And so I tell
Right.
people, even if people mean well,
True.
it's not necessarily always their place,
Mm-hmm.
or they're not in a position
I agree.
to really give you advice on something that they've never done, whether it be
You're
your
right.
parents, whether it be your friends, whether it be your spouse.
True.
Because to speak on something that you've never done, you've
Yes.
never considered, you don't do any prior research on, comes from a completely layman's perspective.
Right.
Now, I'll reiterate that people care about you,
True.
people have your best interests at heart, but at the end of the day, if you lack knowledge on a particular topic, your ability to provide solutions, to provide alternatives is as limited as your ability to put me onto something better. So my
Right.
mother is very similar to yours. I love my
Mm-hmm.
mother dearly.
Oh, yes.
But here's what: my mother has not climbed PCP. My mother has not climbed Kilimanjaro. My mother does not swim. I swim. I've ascended the peaks despite the discouragement. Initially, at certain times, out of pure rebellion in the very early days. But right now, for me, it's about precedence and legacy. Being in the Caribbean, being surrounded by water. Why is it that we cannot swim? Let's
Be-
justify these things.
Mhm.
We have, in my lifetime, I have probably brought 15 people up the Peter who are local. I've brought more than 200 curious stories on the Peter. Why? They've done their research. They trust. I tell them to prepare.
Right.
When before we decide to close the door on things or decide to discourage people, whether it be in good faith, we have to realize if we're not even beginning to consider or try to mitigate the risk, then you might as well have that same perspective when it comes to driving, when it comes to meeting people you don't know, when it
Yes.
comes to joining a job and you've heard the job has a bad stigma around it. You might
Right.
as well not go to certain communities ever and help people
True.
because, let's say we use a community like Marsha that might have a certain stigma attached.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say that there isn't the next best thing there?
True.
It's all about mitigating the situation as best as you can and taking the appropriate measures. A lot of the breakthroughs that have happened in our time and times before has been people who have gone against the grain. And again, I'm not saying to be completely reckless, but
I
there's
agree.
a time and place for everything. There's a time where you have to be reckless and take a risk,
True.
and you have to be able to be okay with the outcome.
True.
As long as you've made peace with the outcome, I tell people you do best practice. Best practice being that you were honest. You knew there was an opportunity to take care of yourself. You knew there was an opportunity to bring you closer to success. You've done it. Then let your experience serve as a potential scenario, a
Yeah.
potential reference point for people to build on. Do not continue to operate in a place of, because this person told me that
I
was the situation and that's the reality, then that's my new reality. So
agree.
that's what I tell people. It is what it is in terms of, yes, it might be difficult, yes, it might be unconventional,
All right.
but you got to embrace the challenge. And for me, I put it upon myself that despite the outcome, I'm willing to be the person to do it.
I agree. And again, you referred to the outcomes with every journey. There are outcomes and teachable lessons that tend to shape our mindset and how we approach life. What did those climbs teach you or instill in you?
Boy, those climbs, resiliency, the team. There's a difference between when you climb as an individual and when you climb with the team. When you move as a group, it's slower. It can be more frustrating. There's more dynamics and variables at play. When you're on your own, and that's a common quote, on your own you'll go faster,
Yeah,
but as a team you'll go further.
true.
So you'll go fast on your own, but as a team, the amount that you can accomplish is massive. So that's what I learned on Kilimanjaro. We were a massive group, but the amount of lives that were touched, the amount of stories, the amount of information I gained because of that group, much, much larger than what I could have done on my own. And it taught me patience. Because
True.
myself and my partner, we were fitter than most of the people there. And so it forced me to put myself in the shoes of other people,
Yeah,
which is something we don't sometimes in that journey to achieve. We just expect people to be on our level, to be able to perform, and
that
we
is
forget
true.
we had to beat the iron over and over to get to that place. And so for me, having to operate at the very same pace with them and see them struggle, I was like, where's your empathy? Where's your compassion? You know,
Right.
these people who were once your age, they're no longer your age. Give them the grace to be able to take their time. And likewise, if you have the energy, put yourself in a position to make their journey easier. So it really made me think. And, I want to shout out the Tanzanian people. These people know how to be hospitable. That was a big thing I saw. You give them something to share, they would split it among 5 or 10 people. And it wasn't a problem. No arguments. Yeah.
Okay, so you spoke about it just now, how important it is to pull people up with you, how important it is to give people grace, how important it is to inspire others to enjoy the thrill of the journey. How can one embrace the thrill of their journey?
Be present. Don't
Yes, get that.
consider everything happening before, what could have gone wrong, what might go wrong tomorrow. That was my problem on the early days of the climb. I'm like, well, if I was on my own, I could have gone fast. And these people are taking so long. I could have been ahead. What about tomorrow? Instead, the thing about nature, you take your time. Cliche as it is, smell the roses, feel the wind on your face, see the beauty of another country, see the beauty of the other people. It's cliche, but gratitude is something that really makes you slow down and realize the things that you have going for you.
Right.
And that's how you do it.
I believe what you just shared is applicable not only to the when I speak about the climb in my context, I speak about any journey, whether it would be something you're pursuing academically, your career, anything that you're pursuing. I believe that it is important to stop and embrace the thrill of the journey. Sometimes there will be failures, there will be challenges along your journey, but just
Mm,
stop and enjoy every moment. That's why I was like, he went there, and yes, this is exactly not where I wanted him to go, because again, it's a free platform where you share based
mm,
on your own experience. But I was just happy that you mentioned that it's important to embrace and really live in the moment and embrace every step of your journey.
indeed, indeed, most definitely.
So earlier I spoke about my mother and how, I guess, because of how I was raised, sometimes I always go back and say, maybe I should be cautious about pursuing a particular thing. What would you say to individuals, specifically parents, who create that box, erring on the side of caution and deterring or swaying their kids in different directions as they see some dreams as non-traditional, risky, or dangerous?
What I would say is, are you willing to sacrifice your kids' true creativity and true passion for the sake of fulfilling yours. Because often these things that we expect of our children, it's more so our ambitions and not necessarily theirs. Now, oftentimes they can share our ambition if they've, you know, embraced it and they feel that it's something that they want to live up to. But generally, that's not the case. It's our own ambitions that we've hopefully put onto them, and they now have to carry it on our behalf. So I would say, listen, the things that you try to sometimes stop, especially in my case, they happen behind your back. Unfortunately, my mother tried to stop me from swimming too deep, and I ended up still going to the beach with my friends, and I taught myself how to swim. And then eventually, through the hotels, I had some of the guests to teach me how to swim. When I climb most of my mountains, I tell her about 2 months later. And at that point, what can you do? You know, would you prefer to wake up to a potential call that something's happened to me? Are you going to try to lock me into a cage? That's not the way to live. If there is something and it's not of inherent, like, not mischievous or malicious, if it's not malicious in its nature, then by all means, explore it. At least explore it first. And if there is enough evidence to support as to why, then maybe you can shelve it for now. But you have to give people the opportunity to, one, say, okay, that's not for me. Or challenge the child. Tell them, you know what, try this. If you can keep this up for a certain amount of time, then we can explore it more. But when you try to completely close the door, human beings are resilient. They will find a way, and it might happen behind your back without you even knowing.
As we bring this interview to a close, I just want to again thank you so much for joining us here. But before you leave, are there any last words that you would like to share?
I would say, you know what, life is for living. Live it well. You have one life to live. And so if you don't live it well, there's no more redo.